everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I'm super excited to have Christina Wegner on. She was actually referred to me by a good friend of mine. My kids go to the same school and actually are in the same class. And when I asked her about, she's been listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast, and she just said, she reached out. I think I have the perfect person for you. Based upon what I know about your show, this is the exact right person. So I'm just super excited to have you on now, just get to know you more, Christina.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Well, I would say that I am in a space of continuous learning and improvement. I am the Vice President of Marketing at the Vollrath company. We are a 145-year-old manufacturing business. We manufacture commercial food service equipment and OEM products. And we are an ever-growing and evolving company. And so I would say that because of that, that causes my leadership style and skills to be put to the test on a daily basis. And, this week has definitely given me a run for my money, which I very much appreciate.
Yeah, it's like having diversity in your day. It's never a boring time. And if it was the same thing every day, right, it would just be like, what am I doing here? I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I like to have it being different. I like doing different things and experiencing different things, even if they are a headache sometimes.
Yes, for sure. And, I think the leadership journey is a very interesting one to me because I think that from an early age, I always like to position myself as the leader, or, back in the day, we used to call girls that were leaders very bossy. When I was in kindergarten, on my report card, the teacher wrote needs improvement or marked needs improvement. And then in the below copy said, I'm concerned to ever leave the room because Kristina may take it over.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I love it.
So my parents knew at a pretty early age that there was definitely nothing getting in my way from that perspective.
Oh, it's great because you completely answered a question I normally ask, which is where your drive to lead comes from. But I mean, it sounds like you were just kind of born with the seed to want to take things over and lead. But there something that, you felt was just that you ever see was your mom just really strong in the home, and you think that might have had any, persuasion on your part, I guess?
Yeah, my mom always worked, and I think that was always something. And when I was younger, she actually worked at my dad's office. My dad was a general dentist for many years and then became an oral surgeon. And so my dad's drive definitely played a role in my professional career. And then my mom worked at my dad's office when he first started out. And then she kind of moved her way up through the corporate ladder. And, she just retired as an executive director of a nonprofit last year. And so I definitely had two really incredible role models in my life that showed me that, hard work truly pays off. And, as a woman going up the corporate ranks, my mom really proved to me that, if you set your mind to it, you really can accomplish what you want to accomplish. And I think I went into all of my leadership roles with my eyes wide open too, that, I had to be prepared for the things that I knew could come my way, but also be open to the stuff that I wasn't prepared for, and how I accepted that, and what my facial expressions were, and, you know, what my immediate reactions were, and things like that have definitely evolved over my career. And I would say yesterday I had some moments where those things came into play at work, but I've really evolved and honed a lot of those skills as I've moved through my career.
Interesting. Yeah, that is funny. The emotional self-management that we hope we see improve over time as leaders, like the maturity that happens. Because there's some of the things you're just like, your mouth's wide open, jaw dropped, eyes wide when something happens. And then when you, as you get more mature in your leadership, then maybe that doesn't happen and you are inside bursting, or, going, what, inside, but not showing on the outside. So that is funny. And that makes it, from the leadership perspective, it makes a huge difference on how we control our emotions. Because if our people are sensing and seeing and noticing shifts in our body language and all those things, right, they're going to pick up on it. And it causes a huge amount of stress and anxiety for them. And so we have to realize that there are things that we say that we don't say, do things that we do and that we don't do, and how it really does impact those around us, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a pretty fair-skinned Scandinavian. So when any sort of emotion comes over me, usually I turn some shade of red. So that has been something that I have been coached on how to control that emotion. But also I have worked very diligently to be mindful of it, so that I don't, my poker face isn't blown when it needs to remain at the same tone.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, I know. And I've done the same thing. And I'm really, really good in public settings with it. I'm not so good when I'm like around people I'm comfortable with. So my family, for example, I try to like maintain control, but this is the area where I'm just weakest, where somebody will just push a button and then I'll go from 0 to 100. And I don't do it at all in the workplace, which is so interesting. Like I have such good emotional self-management at work and then not so great at home. So it's like it's a work in progress. I always say that about leadership, right? It's a journey, and we are all works in progress, and we're just trying to get ahead in life. We're just trying to survive,
Without question. Without question. That is so true. One little trick that I don't remember who told me this many, many years ago, but I still to this day use it, especially in public speaking settings. I speak in front of a lot of groups, and sometimes really large groups, and sometimes the smaller groups are even more intimidating sometimes to stand in front of, especially when they're your peers and things like that. But a trick that someone taught me about slowing your adrenaline and your heartbeat down so that your voice doesn't shake and you're not as nervous is singing a song in your head that just comes naturally to you. So whether it's singing ABCs or Mary Had a Little Lamb or Happy Birthday or the Pledge of Allegiance, whatever the song is for you, to kind of do that in your head, and you just keep repeating it over and over and taking deep breaths, and all of a sudden you'll find your heartbeat will slow to a steady pace, and then it's like everything's cool and you can go on with what you were trying to do. And that has been a really cool trick that has done a lot of good for me in my career.
No, I love that. That's great. Yeah, I do a lot of speaking as well. And I have to agree with you that it's the smaller groups, particularly those who you feel like are your peers or those that they're like friends or something. I don't know if it's because we feel like we're more judged by those who know us versus like those who don't. We don't care about their judgment. I don't know, but it is funny that you say that. And that would be the same place at work if you have to speak to an entire employee group, or one of your colleagues has you're in a different department, but they've asked you to come talk about a particular topic, and you're just like, you just want to crumble right there when you're doing it versus doing it in a large group of people. So I agree. It's interesting how that impacts us as leaders.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'm curious to know, the folks that are reporting to you right now, how would they describe your leadership style? What would they say about your leadership style?
So I think that they would say that I am a strong, direct leader, but on the backside, I'm extremely loving and nurturing and caring. So I have a very direct style, and I definitely flex my style to each of the people that report to me so that I, don't scare people too much, or I meet them where they are with my directness. And on the back end, after we've learned from whatever happened, or we're moving forward on something, I am their biggest cheerleader, and I am their biggest cheerleader along the way, without question. I think sometimes I have to stop myself from defending my team and kind of having perspective on other things that are going on. So if someone comes to me and says, something went wrong on my team, or, somebody's doing something they shouldn't be, or we need to give them feedback, or whatever the case is, I'm the first thing that I start to do is defend my person. And so I've had to step back and say, okay, I'm going to be in a space of listening and hearing what you have to say and taking that in versus defending my team on the onset. So I think, to answer your question, I think that they would say that without question, I am very direct, and I am very clear on what my expectations are on my team, but I am their biggest cheerleader at the same time, and will, die on a sword for them without question.
Love it. And that is that special combination of leader with heart, because just because I'm always I'm talking to people, or I'm talking about things that might appear to be, let's say, quote unquote, soft, where it's really relational and it has all that heart. Heart definitely exhibits itself when you're there to set clear expectations, or when you're helping someone course correct because they've gone off path. And so that people know that you have the care, that you are their cheerleader during those times that they aren't shining, but they know that because you already have landed on the sword for them several times. And so it's that balance. There is a balance there. And so I'm never advocating for only being someone who's super direct, very clear, and not having the side that, like you described, of being the cheerleader, of, having that sacrificial kind of feel about your leadership, versus the opposite way, which is the person who doesn't set clear expectations, the person who's giving no guidance to their people, and maybe isn't direct enough, and then gives so much of the other stuff. So there is a good balance there for sure, right?
Without question. I speak to my team a lot about art and science, and making sure that, you can have all of the science to being a good manager, but if you don't have the art to it, it sort of falls flat, and you lose people along the way, and it's hard to bring them along with you, especially in really difficult times when you need to rally and have a little bit of rah-rah and get people excited and kind of follow you into battle. You need to be able to make sure that you have both of those things. So if I'm just being super direct to my team all the time and not, building them up and giving them really positive feedback at the same time, then I'm going to have a hard time bringing them along with me in the difficult times. So I really try. I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it, and I'm continuously working at it. When I came to Vollrath 2.5 years ago, I definitely had to hone that skill, because I came from an environment at a financial services organization where directness and sharpness and things like that was acceptable, and I had to tone my sharpness and directness down so that I met the group who didn't really ever receive direct feedback, or feedback in general ever. I had to kind of find that balance. And now I'd say 2.5 years later, it's expected of me to give that feedback. And if I'm not giving it on a regular basis, I do hear from my team like, hey, I haven't gotten feedback from you on stuff. Am I doing okay? I'm actually concerned that I'm not hearing from you. And I want to do a pulse check on that. So I appreciate that from my team when, they want to make sure that they're staying within their guardrails and doing what they need to do. And then they expect that of me to give them that type of feedback, which is great.
Yeah, that's great. It's good that you establish the cadence, that expectation from them, and a comfort level, because that shows like psychological safety. I think when you are able to have that kind of, hopefully you give the feedback, hopefully they're able to give you either feedback back or their assessment of why you might be perceiving that. And so having that back and forth discussion makes them feel safer, and people want to stay in places where they feel safer. So
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Something that I have implemented, again, in my previous job, and then I brought with me here was, I would say, an informal 360, and I do it 2 times a year with my team. And I send it out at mid-year. I usually do my performance reviews quarterly with my team. I meet with them on a regular basis, and then let me start over. So when I meet with my team, I meet with them on a pretty regular basis. So everybody that reports to me, I meet with them either weekly or biweekly. And I would say that bi-monthly, we're checking in on their performance plans, or at least quarterly checking in on their performance plans to make sure that they're headed in the right direction and there's no surprises, so that when we do have mid-year reviews and end-of-year reviews, everything is very predictable. Everyone will know what that conversation will look and sound like. But the other thing that I've implemented is a 360 or informal 360 review, and it's a simple email that I send out to the people that individual work with, both, if they're on the account service side, I'll send it out to their clients, in air quotes, and then also some of their peers, and then some of the other people that they may interact with, and have them answer a handful of really simple questions about how they're performing, where they may have some opportunity for improvement. And that tool, while it's super simple, doing it at mid-year and end of year, has really changed the trajectory of some of the people on my team's careers in a very positive way, because I had mentioned that they hadn't been getting feedback, and now they're getting feedback not only from me, but now they're getting feedback from others that they work with, and they're almost yearning for it when they come in. And if I don't have it ready for them during their mid-year or their end of year, they're like, when am I getting my 360 feedback? When am I getting it? And it's not even that, it's because it's all positive. They want to start working on the things that need improvement, and they want to make sure that they're, continuing to evolve professionally and personally with their relationships internally. And that's a pretty cool thing to watch happen over the last 2.5 years.
I love that. I mean, just a whole culture of feedback both ways, just all the way around, everybody giving everybody feedback. That idea of continuous improvement, which is what you talked about, really shines through in all of that. And I have to be honest, there aren't many, I've spoken to a lot of leaders in this show. I know a lot of leaders, and there aren't many who do what you just described. So, kudos to you for just having that openness and providing them and giving them the gift of that real consistent, and open feedback too. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I laugh a little bit because one of my colleagues and I will sometimes start a conversation with, remember, feedback is a gift.
Yep.
And I have a gift for you.
Oh, that's good. Oh, and they're like, uh-oh. Are they smiling? Yeah, they're smiling when you say that. And it's like, okay, now I'm preparing my mind for what I'm going to receive.
Yeah, so we've tried to make a little bit of light of it. We're based out of Wisconsin, and so we do have a sense of Midwest nice, as many people know, and sometimes it's hard to give good, constructive feedback when you want to be nice to everybody. And so that's why my colleague and I will sometimes preface a conversation with a little bit of light to it, Yes. You remember that feedback is a gift, and I have a gift today for you, and we'll start there.
Oh, wow. I love it. And that's another that I tell people a lot, that if we're looking to change, we should find an accountability partner, somebody inside our organization that we trust, that's not going to throw us underneath the bus, but they're going to be someone who's watching out for something that we know we're working on. And they'll be the person that can call us on the carpet. We've given them permission to, but they also give us positive feedback when we are changing. And so as you described, it sounds like that person might be your accountability partner. And that's just exactly what I tell people to do all the time. It's so important to have that.
Yes. He's definitely my accountability partner. And, I think that it's also important to have somebody like that on the outside too, that can be, whether it's your accountability partner or kind of a mentor relationship, however you want to look at it. But our acquaintance that you and I have, she has been that for me, and she knows how I work, and she knows what fires me up, and she knows what kind of brings me down. And so when I can go to her and say, here's the scenario, and she can say, give me a 2-line text message or pop me a quote of the day or whatever it is, it's really awesome to be able to have somebody in your life that's able to build you up that way and kind of see that you're at your best and and vice versa. To be able to give that energy back to that person is really important as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, so we can hear that you are a more emotionally intelligent leader, and you were the perfect guest for the show. So thanks, Stephanie, for referring Christina over. But I want you now to share a time, and be specific if you can, please, a story about maybe when you were not the best leader, maybe you were not as emotionally intelligent, maybe you weren't following the cues as much. And what did that look like? And then what did you do to come out of that situation too?
That's a good question. I would say that I probably have a number of examples for you on that I probably can look back now and wish I would have handled the situation maybe slightly differently. But, at the end of last year, I was having some challenges with one of my peers and how our teams were working together. And there was we both were busy and we both had a lot on our plates. And I think that fueled some of the tension that was going on and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we both had kind of a blow up with each other, if you will, a professional blow up. But you could tell that things had come to a head, and we were both at our wits' end, and the camel's back had been broken, and so we had gotten together, and I think that email I think can be it can be an amazing tool, and it can be a really awful tool as well. And I think that it's really hard, especially when you're emotional and you want to move things forward. It's really easy to hide behind your screen and type emails and send those emails, and then how the other person on the other end receives that message and how the tone in which they're reading it, I think, can get really lost. And so I would say in this example in particular, that is what was happening is there were kind of some venomous emails going back and forth with each other, what they seemed to be venomous. And what ended up happening is I think I took a time out and said, okay, I need to make sure that I'm leading by example for my team, because I was starting to see it trickle into my team. This toxic negative attitude was kind of filtering down into both of our teams, and we can't work that way, especially in a pretty small culture, small organization. We need everybody and all hands on deck in a really positive way. So I was able to step back and reflect on that situation and say, we're not getting anywhere with the negative attitudes and the rumors that were going around and all that stuff. So I actually brought my team together as one of my steps, and I sat down with them and said, listen, I know this is going on, and I know that I'm part of the problem. And I said, I need you all to come from a place of positivity. And I know that as a culture from our team, that's where we lead from and where we do our best work. And so I need us to walk out this door and have that as our forefront, or that our mindset is more on the positive side of things. And I said, I want us to also be able to hold each other accountable to that, and me included. So if you see me going down a rabbit hole of negativity, or, even just sharp, sarcastic comments being made, because I can sometimes head down that path to let out steam, be sarcastic, you guys have to call me on it, and I'm allowing you to do that. So that was one of the things that I did. The other thing that I did is I got this individual together with another one of our peers so that we could have a neutral party sitting in the room for us to talk with each other and be very civil with each other and get to the bottom of our problem, but also create an action plan to go forward and make sure that we don't fall into this rut again. And so I would say that meeting was very positive, and I was talking with somebody on my team this morning about it, asking her if she was still feeling the residual effects from that in a positive or negative way. And she said, so far so good. Everything seems to be moving in an extremely positive direction now that we have had that in-person conversation. We've seen some pretty big improvements. So I would say that without getting too deep into the details, I would say that was a pretty big situation that impacted almost everybody on my team, including myself, as well as another team in the organization. And without us being able to step back, see it from a bigger perspective, get past our own emotions and frustrations, we could still be in that pretty dark place right now.
That's a huge part of just, being at work. The emotions we talked about earlier, the emotions that come up inside of that space, and all of the egos that are just all over the place thrown around, make it just, it's crazy. It's nuts. We and most of us are going home exhausted, because of it. And some of us are fighting against it. And I have a conversation often about this idea of humanness, and that when we're at work, we have to have the ability to be human. There are limitations, though, because we have to realize the impacts that our words and our actions have on those around us. And so once we realize that, what you did here, you took it upon yourself to say, I've got to take action. I can't keep, I'm dragging myself and all these other people down as well. I have a role to play in this. Admitting that mistake and the role that you play in that mistake is just huge. But that's what work is about. I mean, because we were with these people for, in most cases, more time than we're with our families. So it's
right.
It's like they are our families, and we got to figure out how we get through this, and it's messy, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you said something earlier in the podcast about, our emotional intelligence and being aware of those things. And I think sometimes it's really hard when you're stuck in that moment to even just have the self-awareness that you are part of the problem, that it's so easy to point one finger at, and then as somebody else it's causing the angst or whatever. But I think part of the reason that in that scenario, so much headspace was being taken, or space in my head was being taken up by this situation, was because I was a part of the problem. And for me to be able to peel that onion back and say, okay, let's take a step back here, Christina. You are part of the problem, and your attitude is seeping into everything too. And you need to now be vulnerable and stand up in front of your entire team of, 22 people and say that you're part of the problem. And then if they see you doing that hopefully that will be an incredible step forward for them too, to say that it's okay to not be perfect at being a leader, and that you're trying to improve and bring them along on that journey with you. I think that gets a lot of really positive reception versus trying to be perfect all the time.
Yes. And because the truth of the matter is we're not perfect. So even us 100%. Trying to be perfect is like not even, it's fake, right? Because we are right. Not.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah, it's actually like better for us to be like, okay, I totally screwed up. Like, and you don't want to keep doing it 25 times a week. I mean, it's like, okay, I screwed up. Okay, I screwed up. I mean, at some point, people are like, I'm only going to forgive you so much. The same exact thing you keep doing over and over and over and over, right? So there's this idea of we actually do need to work on ourselves. But there's going to be a new humanness that pops up inside of that messy, messy place, and that's going to be okay. And we'll have to, apologize for that as well. But I just think, kudos to you, and just it's the awareness, maybe you're aware, because what I always say about myself is I'm hyper self-aware. So I have a high level of self-awareness. I don't always have the same level of basically social awareness, which basically means what's happening to people around me. And even if I do, sometimes I'm so in my own head with things that I continue to move forward despite what I know they are going through. Like I'll know they are mentally in a place, and because I am so in my head, and it's about me at that exact moment, then I can't move past it. And then I kind of, I'm in their space, and they're like, wait a second, I have this going on. And it's like, shoot, Heather.
Yeah.
You're doing it again. Stop it. So we just all have that. We just have it.
Yeah, no. And, I think you can appreciate this too, as a mom. I really try to lead by example, having 2 young girls in this space as well. And so I think that it translates really beautifully to home life too, and making sure that, my girls see that I fumble sometimes, and I don't do everything perfectly sometimes, but at the same time, I want them to see, even when I'm working late at night, like I had to do last night, and I'm reviewing some stuff at work, I can bring them into the conversation so they understand what I'm reviewing and what I'm doing at work, so that they can be a part of it and understand that I have to work really hard so that I can do a really good job at my job, and they can kind of see that translate into whether it's their sports that they're doing or their schoolwork they're doing and the conversations they're even having with their friends. You know, my 8-year-old said to me yesterday, oh, I've been having problems with challenges with one of my girlfriends this week. And I said, why don't you just ask her what's going on? Just say, hey, friend, what do you have going on this week? You know I told you I was going to play in the snow, and I changed my mind after you had already gone outside. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Why'd you throw a snowball at my face yesterday? You know, it's like,
yes.
Just have that conversation. And while that seems so simple to us as grown-ups now, to an 8-year-old, that's as big as what I was dealing with my peer a few months ago, you know, having that and getting nervous and having to work the confidence up to have that conversation is hard for an 8-year-old. And so if we can sort of practice those things at home, I think that we're just building a pretty incredible next generation of people behind us.
I love that. And actually, the one thing that stood out for me about what you just said about your that incident that happened is that you did not distance yourself from your imperfection. And what I find often, because I do talk to lots of people, is that often we do distance ourselves from our imperfection. And what I mean by that is we will say, well, I wasn't my best self 15 years ago when I first started as a manager. And I hear that, and it's not poking fun. It really is a reality. We often do that. But what you did is you said 3 months ago, here's this thing that happened. And so you didn't.
It was actually last month. We can be real honest.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. But still, it's like what I'm saying is that's way closer than most of us say. Most of us say it's a year ago, it's 10 years ago, it's 15 years ago. It was when I was a kid, whatever it is, because we all have kind of this uncomfortable feeling when we have to admit that we aren't our best selves today. That the issue is that we are our best selves in slivers, and we are our best selves from day to day in moments of the day. And I think we have to just all kind of wrap our heads around that, accept that that's who we are. And like now you're better for it. Doesn't mean you're not going to do something or go down that road again, because we are human. So that's the message I want people to hear with this. It's just, tremendous. I love that example you gave. And I bet you there are more people on this call who may not want to admit it, but also have had some situations like that. I know I have, for sure. So
I think it's interesting when people in interviews, whether it's I've done a number of video things or panel conversations or podcasts or whatever the conversation is, or even in just a job interview, and someone says, tell me about your biggest mistake you've made in your life. And it's like, well, where would you like me to begin? But at the same time, I don't necessarily consider them mistakes or, missteps or whatever. I feel like every time I do have a misstep, it's a learning opportunity for me. And if I don't have those, I'm not going to get better. And to your point earlier about none of us are perfect. If we just continue to learn and grow and get feedback and use feedback as a gift, I feel like that is the best thing that we can do. And if we're stuck in a space where we keep doing the same thing over and over again, we may need to reflect a little bit further on what we need to do differently on that.
I love it. That's great. I think we just have to, we can probably be a lot less anxious leaders if we can just give ourselves the grace to know that all of these are learnings, that learning is good, that it's feedback for us to improve. And that's all it is. That's all it is. And now, as you kind of described though, so that is what it means for us. But on the other end, there are people maybe that have been hurt or been impacted. And so obviously we do have a role that we have to go and take care of it, as you did by going to talk to your team and having that neutral person come in and sit with you and the person that you're having an issue with, and resolving that and taking the action to actually do it. I mean, just tons of courage, lots of emotional intelligence involved in all that. The vulnerability that's involved, just, a lot of really good stuff. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But it's just so much. That's the stuff of leadership right there. So thank you for providing us that example.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for listening.
So, okay, for those leaders who could either be in similar situations, people struggling in their leadership, just someone at a crossroads, or just someone who needs like a little extra motivation just to get through the day. We're all just trying to survive this. What pearls of wisdom, one or two maybe, that you might leave for them today?
Well, so that's a great question. I actually want to, I have a really cool 5 easy steps, but I'm delaying myself for 5 seconds because I'm going to just pull it up really quickly if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine. No,
so I get them.
I think it's great. We're real time here.
I know. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't want it to be something that's canned. I'd rather be something that just pops up in your head. So that works out best.
I just did an editorial on this topic, and I was going to try to pull it up really quickly. And of course, it's taking its dear old time.
Well, it sounds like one of the things, while you're doing that, it sounds like one of the things is this idea of, feedback as a gift. Give it and receive it, really loose, like always give it and always receive it and do it and then change as a result of what you hear on that feedback. It seems like that might be one of them from a leader perspective, because in fact, the show is going to be something about giving and receiving feedback. This particular podcast, I'll title it around that, because it is a gift, and not many leaders are really open to not just giving, but receiving it and then acting upon what it is they hear. It's so critical.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that, so to answer your question, I think that some nuggets of wisdom that I would love to leave behind are things that are super important to me right now. And one of those things is being a lifelong learner. And I would say that there's 5 key pieces to being a lifelong learner for me that I like to tap into. So one of those is to really tap into the experienced talent around you. I think that sometimes we forget when we surround ourselves with really cool people or really good people that have a lot of great experiences, we sort of forget about them. And so I would encourage people to think about those around you that you can get some nuggets of wisdom from on an ongoing basis. The second thing I would say is commit the time to being a lifelong learner, because it's so easy to push it off and say, oh, I don't have enough time to journal today, or I don't have time to meditate today, or I don't have time to read, a self-improvement book or something like that. Make the time, because as soon as you put it on your calendar and you make the time for it, you'll see those improvements. And, an example of a way that I do that for myself, I have a 45-minute commute each way. And so I make sure to capitalize on that time, whether it's having coaching telephone calls with my coach, or doing a self-help book or a self-improvement book on Audible. I do a lot of podcasts. I connect with my friends that I have worked with outside of the industry that I'm in, and I use that time in as best way I can. The third thing is to pay it forward. So remember that you have something to offer others, and whether that's volunteering with an elementary school or middle school and sharing the wealth of knowledge you have in that capacity, or mentoring somebody in your current organization, being a good example for your kids, whatever it is, I really recommend paying it forward. And it can be as simple as on your news feed on Instagram or Facebook, just sharing the podcast that you're listening to. That's paying it forward. The fourth thing that I suggest is really thinking outside of the industry that you work in, and making sure that you're not just getting stuck in the status quo of your industry. And right now I'm in an industry that's a little bit antiquated and a little bit behind the times in some ways, but in other ways that brings value to the table around meetings in person and things that are still really core to this industry that are really exciting that have been lost in other industries. But I would just suggest making sure that you're not in that tunnel vision and forgetting to look outside of the industries that you're serving and innovate and improve based on that. And then the fifth thing that I would recommend is really stretching outside of your comfort zone and trying new things. I think whether it's being vulnerable in a situation like I was just talking about with your leadership group, or, trying something new that you haven't done, whether it's getting your MBA or taking a class that you haven't made time for, or, personally doing something outside, learning how to crochet or something like that. Make your brain think differently and outside of your comfort zone. I think those 5 things really, really help you grow as an individual and as a professional.
Awesome. Well, those are some good points. Hopefully, though, I was just writing pretty crazily just now, so hopefully those who are listening, you also got some good nuggets there. Something that you just kind of let yourself baste in those things, because the pay it forward concept what I love about this idea of doing something different and stretching is you just gave us an example of that by what it is you did, and that's a perfect way to teach, right? Is to tell a story that actually is something you've done and it impacts others. I appreciate that. So for those who are listening, if you did find great value in listening to Christina and I talk, please do share this podcast episode with others. And don't forget to write a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might listen. And when you do that, it actually helps to increase the ranking on the algorithm, and people will actually find all of this good content that's there. I think there's something special here, not just because I'm the host, but because the leaders that are on here really are giving us the truth of the matter, right? It's not about perfection. They're giving us the stories of when they weren't so great. And that's where all the learning takes place. So definitely do that. Give a review. Make sure you share. And Kristina, this has been really great. I really appreciate your time and joining me as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. And if anybody has any questions, they're welcome to reach out, or you're welcome to reach back to me at any point.
Awesome. And you'll be able to find her contact information in the show notes as well. Thanks, everybody, for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.